Bringing the thunder.
Wonder how annoying that was for people to listen to.
Hello and welcome to the Drunkduck Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 627. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tanserine and Baines.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. This week we're talking about technical aspects of comic making again. So we did a few of these. We talked about stuff, didn't we? Like something character design, I think. Talked about layouts, yeah, paneling. So this week we're talking about keeping characters consistent, keeping your world consistent. And also, if we've got time, we'll talk about speech bubbles and lettering. So we'll just see how we go. I think that's rather interesting.
For sure.
Maybe I'll finally learn how to do lettering. Finally keep characters consistent, which I never have. All right. So before we get into that, I've got to bring up the featured comic. I featured a comic this week, I think. I did, and it was Game Punks, so I'm going to tell you about Game Punks. Hello, I am, of course, Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Game Punks. It's a post-gamer comic featuring two punks and their meta-commentary on games, life, nostalgia, and the world in general. Gamer comics were what made webcomics back in the day. Sure, there were other types of webcomics out there, but it wasn't till gamer comics took off that webcomics exploded as a medium. We don't really think of them as much today, so things like Game Punks are a great reminder, as well as bringing original stuff to the table. It's a quirky humor comic. It's also a meta-commentary, slice of life sort of thing, with rough but cool art in its own particular style. It's all digital and mostly in colour. This is a comic by Troy V.S. and it's rated T, so, give it a bit of a read. If you're like comedy and comics and you like games and appreciate them, this might be right up your alley, especially if you appreciate the history of webcomics and where they all came from. Anyway, so yeah, have a look at Game Punks. Rated T. And that was the feature comic, Game Punks. So I hope you like that little comic. It's pretty cool, pretty interesting. I didn't even know the characters were male and female until, I went and read the last page and finally, oh my god, I twigged. But it really doesn't matter if they're male or female because they're both cool anyway, so gender doesn't matter too much. Okay, next up we have the featured music. Gomez has given us a theme to a comic called Thrud, Goddess of Thunder. Big fat beats and an epic sound. This one really brings the thunder. It'd be great as the intro tune to a professional wrestling match. It really has that kind of epic building sort of feel. It builds anticipation perfectly and really slams home and delivers on its promises. Epic sounds. Maybe this could be the new Quackcast theme. I would really like that. I'm going to ask Wallace about that, so I hope he accedes to that request because this would be so cool. Anyway, take it away, Gun Wallace, with your theme to Thrud, Goddess of Thunder.
And that was the theme to Thrud, Goddess of Thunder. Come on, guys, be my thunder.
Thunder.
Oh, jeez. We were like spending all that time talking about thunder and just left me hanging.
Hey, it was thunder that just was too high up in the sky and it wasn't heard. Sorry.
Oh, God. All right. So, now we're going to talk about keeping stuff consistent in comics, lettering if we have time, and speech bubbles, speech bubbles. So I know when I'm trying to keep a comic characters consistent, I have a lot of trouble doing that. So what it's called when you do like a booklet or do like sheets of characters from all different angles. They call it like a Bible, I think. So a Bible for your characters, a Bible for this thing that you're making. And you show your character from like 360 degrees views. You sketch them from back to front, sides, 3/4 views, like 3/4 front, 3/4 back, whatever. And you do like their haircut, you do like different swatches for the colours of their hairs, their clothes, their skin, all that stuff, and that's a character Bible, and that's meant to help you keep it consistent. That's what people do in animation and professional comics. That's a great idea.
Animated shows will have the whole turnaround with the 360 view of the character, like drawn.
It's brilliant. I've tried to do it, but I just lose interest. So
I'm so glad you said that, because I did the same. I'm like, I have 6 main characters in my comic. I'm like, I'm going to do a Bible. So I keep their heights, keep track of their heights compared to each other, and like blah, blah, blah. And I didn't even finish the first character.
Me neither. Oh my God. Okay, so I feel a little better
it's
about
so
my
boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like these guys who do it professionally, they're being paid. They're probably getting like several $1,000s to do this Bible. Like, oh my God, that's...
Oh yeah, it is work.
I'll do the work. But when you're doing it for yourself...
Not fun. It's work.
Why bother? You're creating something you're never going to be able to use in the comic. Oh, you might be able to use it like a teaser thing or something like that. But really no one wants to see it. So why do it?
I remember hearing about how The Simpsons, like when they were first, this is probably on an early DVD commentary from that show, how when they were first having merchandise created and having to create 3D toys or whatever of these 2D characters. In the early days, there was no 3D. It's like, what does Bart's head look like from the top? Like, we don't know. Like, figuring out like how to match the side view in 2D art, match the side view to the front view and all this kind of stuff and views that they just would never show.
Yeah.
Was tricky. It was hard they had to sort of redesign the characters almost to create that 3D version.
Oh God, yeah, because that would be new to them, because they'd never really done Bart from the top, like as you say, he was just from the sides.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bizarre new thing. What were you going to say, Tom?
I was going to say, like, the closest thing I ever did for, like, not a Bible, because first of all, I never felt skilled enough to sit down and do it. Second of all, I never had the time. I felt that if I had like a few hours to make a Bible, I should probably do a page.
Yeah.
And yeah, then it's just boring. But the one thing that I really had to decide on, at least in my head, were the heights, especially since for Without Moonlight, I have like a bunch of kids, and they have to compare against adults.
Yeah.
So, like I was thinking, for example, Alex always comes up like the most that she can come up to is the shoulder of any adult, and the adult that she comes the shoulder of is going to be the shortest one, the shortest adult.
Okay.
Like that sort of thing. So I have a relative thing that okay, XYZ character has to come up to this point next to XYZ else character. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I do the same thing for Bottomless Waitress. At least I know Frances is the shortest one, Polly is the tallest one of the normal characters, and Jane is the middle. So I just have to know the relationships relative. And then Nikki is extra big, so she's the outsize one, so she's even taller than Polly, and that's all I have to know. Oh, and so all the other men characters would be about as tall as Polly, because she's tall for a woman, and she doesn't wear high heels, but she has very tall hair as well, so
Yeah.
that's her thing. But yeah, relative sizes are an easy thing to keep in mind once you know.
And then again, at least in my case, the kids also grow.
That's complicated.
Yeah, they don't grow that much because, at least for now, because for the first volume, everything takes place in the span of like 3 months or so, from start to finish. But Fotis especially is hitting a growth spurt at the end of volume 1, and it really is noticeable in volume 2. I have to decide how this is going to show and not look like I just forgot the proportions. So there's that. Yeah.
I don't think you really have to be too careful about doing making them grow too much, because we expect things in comics to be timed to move sort of differently. Does that make sense? We expect things to take longer than they do, or to be stuck at a very simplified stage without everything developing too much. So you could get away with having most of the characters not get too tall. I don't know. It depends how you want to go, how realistic do you want to go with time frames and stuff.
I mean, what I'm hearing is you want a growth spurt, right? Like you want that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have to have I have to be realistic enough. Like I cannot be super realistic for obvious reasons, but I have to be realistic enough because he's 14, going on 15. He's basically 15 now, and on 15 going on 16, he's going to basically grow up about like a head or so more. Yeah. So he's going to be on the tall side because his family were tall for Greek sizes. Okay, at the time all Greeks were very short, except for very specific local populations. Most of us were super short up until, like most generations were short compared to other Europeans until the 80s. And then we probably ate better, and now we're not that short anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a story point that happens, which makes sense.
Yeah, and he is also going to be a bit more angular. He's going to cut the jawline a little bit more, and then eventually we're going to have a bit of stubble as well. So there's all of that I have to keep in mind. So
manly photos.
Yes.
As long as he doesn't have a little wispy moustache.
No, not really. I mean, eventually, I suppose a little bit, but not really.
So will Vitus ever grow a beard for us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll scotch it right now. Francis is never going to grow a beard. So
Good, I like it.
Sorry for that. Pinky, no beard. So again, I'm sorry. Disappoint all the fans of Ladybeards.
I have a future storyline in mind. I guess this is a spoiler for anyone who cares. But I don't know if I'll ever get there because I haven't figured out how to make it work yet. But I've long been thinking of some kind of misadventure where all the characters get their heads shaved against their will. And I've sketched these out. Like, it would all end up bald. Some kind of misadventure, some kind of prankster or something they go up against. And then over the next 2 or 3 issues, I would have their hair slowly growing back.
Whoa.
To have them all bald for an issue or 2, that would be fun.
So you mean in typical Strange or Bottomless Waitress?
In typical Strange, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'd see them all bald, and then we'd see them all with very short hairstyles, then sort of intermediate, and then back to their regular.
Yeah, I like it.
Get that going at some point. I think it'd be fun to do.
Should be.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Easy to do a prank because you could have someone putting glue on the inside of everyone's hat. The only way to get the hats off would be to shave the hair.
Ah, there's an idea. Yeah. That's a lot easier than somehow getting them all shaved without their consent.
Yeah, or head lice. They've all got head lice. And they go, oh, God, what are we going to do? And then someone says, well, shave us. There's other ways to do it.
Lice you can get rid of without shaving off your hair.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that is a method, that's an extreme method that someone could fool them into thinking.
I think the prank with the glue is a lot funnier.
I like that, yeah. I just have to write the right kind of story around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A disgruntled customer who cannot ever find the tape that he wants.
Nice.
Or it could be one of those stupid stories when someone comes in and they think, ha ha ha, I'm gonna, like, one of the characters comes in, ha ha, I'm gonna put glue on this hat, and like TJ's gonna put it on and it's gonna like get stuck to his head, ha ha, and then like one of the other ones comes in and says, ha ha, I'm gonna put this glue on this, and such and such is gonna, so they all do it, like in one of those stupid 80s sitcoms. And then, they end up with all these hats glued. Like, who did this? Oh, is it you? Like pointing fingers. Sorry, Tance, go on.
No, I was thinking about. I think it doesn't work that way, so I'm not gonna say it. But yeah, that would be awesome. As a matter of fact.
Oh my God, this hat's glued onto my head. Shit.
It ties into the idea of character design. I read this somewhere from a comic artist who talked about how, so often people will design characters and the only difference is the hair. Sometimes that's a legit kind of design, just the hair is different. You have the anime trope, I think it is, of only 3 different faces or whatever.
Yeah.
Just different hair. It'd be neat to take all the hair off my characters, and I think they all look different enough that it would work fine.
Mm-hmm. Marvel and DC, I mean, for a long time, they're a bit more different now, but the women were always the same apart from different hair. The men were always the same apart from different hair.
Very much. It is very easy to do that way, in the sense that you only need to keep the hair consistent, and hair doesn't need super consistency, just the style has to be more or less the same, and there you go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I remember
glasses.
When this. Oh, go on.
No, all glasses. Those small trainers.
Yeah. So I remember when I first was designing, like in the first chapters of Without Moonlight, I think that the characters are very inconsistent, though I do think that they are recognizable enough. But anyway, it's a sad story. But I told myself, okay, what features am I going to make sure are always there that are going to be unique to each character? So, for example, Potis has a very, like, he has a curve on, like, his upper eyelid curves in a very specific way, and that is the one thing that is consistent and throughout, for example. Or Father Yannis has the aquiline nose, and things like this that I keep consistent to code for specific characters. Um, yeah, so that they are recognizable from panel to panel.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. It's so tricky because, you know, one of the things I do when I draw Pinky is, I think I've said this before, I'm pretty sure I have, it's like there's a battle in my head between making her exaggerated and cartoony and making her more realistic, and it just depends on whatever I feel like drawing at the time. So I might be thinking, yeah, I want to exaggerate this character and have her more cartoony, and then I think, for another one, I think, no, I want her to be as realistic as possible, which, you know, she never is that realistic. But I do have that, and I have that with all my characters that I draw. Have times when I want to just exaggerate them and make them more, you know, rounded and artificial. And other times I just think, no, I want them to look more realistic. And you can see that reflected on the page. They change. But does that make them, like, very inconsistent and unrecognizable, or is that very inconsistency sort of regular? So people go, oh yeah.
It has never felt like your characters feel very consistent. So
Okay, thank you. That's strange.
Yeah, they do.
Because I feel like they change massively between panels, you know, let alone pages. Oh, okay. Because drawing Pinky from profile versus portrait, it's really hard. She's got like a bumpy nose and big lips and all this kind of stuff. And it's really easy to do in profile, but in portrait, faces are very different between those two things.
yeah.
Yeah.
How do you manage it?
Another cheat code I have is like very specific, unique facial features, like face scars, or Alex has a gap tooth, like the nose is broken in one of the characters, like was broken and mended, like not in place. So yeah, that's another thing that I like to do, like have little nuance on the, or big nuance, because you know Fotis Harley, this, he has a blind eye and 3 scars, like there's
he
no
really,
way.
yeah, he stands out for sure.
Yeah. And, you know, the purple glitter hair and the...
Yeah, and the eye color that is changing with his emotions.
Special eye color, bright golden purple,
Yeah.
and the eye patch that's, you know, just
Exactly. For actually, this is a long time coming. I don't even consider it a spoiler because the audience that is going to consume it probably will never have heard this. So when Fotis eventually is an adult and he is going to be a professor eventually through a lot of trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
And he is going to be asked specifically to wear an eye patch so that he will not be scaring the kids.
Oh wow!
I like that.
Yeah.
Then I'll ask him, were you a pirate?
Yeah, and he's going to, of course, the kids never are scared by him because he's not a scary person, and he will never be a scary person, like intimidating and
Yeah.
heroically intimidated. He's not going to do that.
Intimidating.
Ever.
For a minute there, I thought you said teeny dating, and I thought, oh my god, yeah, okay, yeah. If he doesn't do that, yeah, he won't be a scary person. That's
No, he won't even. No, he will definitely not be that. So the kids never have a problem. It's that there are politics involved that are going to be reflected in this whole thing. So he will be wearing these iPads, but the iPads is going to be so garish and like the one thing that draws attention to what they are trying to hide, that they are going to tell him to just, take it off and
for God's sake,
whatever.
man, take that thing off.
Yeah. and I really look forward to drawing that, and it's probably going to be drawn when I'm very, very old. So,
And finally get around to it.
yeah.
Oh dear. Oh God, I was doing a while ago. I was trying to work out like when I'm going to do this sequel to Pinky or the next story and do her as an old lady. When is she going to be old? And I had to work out, okay, what age was she when she was in this part of the story? Because my story is not chronological. When was she at? What age was she in this part? And then when I finally figured it out, I realized, look, I can't make her a certain age in the 1950s because she'd be way too freaking old. So, or the 1980s or whatever it was what I wanted to do. So, yeah, I really had to figure it out, and it was weird. Like working out what her real age was and where she would fit into in history, So that was strange. I've had to work out. I wanted to be in her 30s, in her early 30s, in the 1920s, which meant that by the Second World War, she would be in her 50s, which fits, I suppose. But by the 1970s, she'd be in her 80s, I think. That works out. Yeah. No, 90s? Yeah, so just... Yeah, it's weird. So realistically, aging characters is tricky.
Yeah, it is. And it feels like, oh my God, he is supposed to stay young for longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you age them like real people, then time is your enemy.
Very much so. Very much so. I was like, when I even started, we're going into character design for this, but when I was deciding on the age, the starting age of all these characters, it was really tough how young I was going to make them, because I wanted them to be as young as possible, but still able to do certain things, so that I would have time afterwards for them to be young enough to be like in the thick of things as history went on. And that was really tough. So...
Yeah, it is hard, isn't it? So it's a huge balancing act, and if you go too far one way, then you miss out on other stuff. So if you make them too young in the original story, then they really can't participate in much, and if you make them too old, then they can't go too far in the future.
So, or at least not as the young guy or girl.
Which is what you want them to be. They
have to be the mature one then,
So, yeah, that's a pain.
Like, to give an idea, I was in my initial concept of, okay, I'm going to have Fotis and he's going to be this and that. And then in the 70s, when the Polytechnic happens, he's going to be a student. And then I said, hang on, how old is he going to be? And then I realized that there is no frigging way for him to have been a student then in the Polytechnic. So I had to find another role for him to place him in there so that I can demonstrate, the happenings and all of that. And that's how Lefteris came along, who is, the son of Martha and Basil.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
so you get to have a character in there after all, a dynasty.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's so much easier to do the Simpsons route or something like that and have the characters just stay the same age forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you lose some. You do have a dimension that you lose, obviously. That's what I did. These characters are probably eternally in their mid-20s to early or mid-30s.
Mm-hmm.
The Chatterbox characters might age, but I don't know. Maybe I can jump around in time like Pinky TA.
Yeah, why not? The thing is, it's like the different genre defines how the characters age as well. Like, take for example 1010. He doesn't age, although I'm pretty sure that, like, the first stories, the racist ones, like the Turning Congo and all of that, were taking place, like, at best in the 1920s. But the last story, which is Tintin and the Picaros, I'm pretty sure is in the 50s or 60s, at least. Could be even a little later. And Tintin is the same age.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Or you could do what like Marvel and DC does and just have your characters magically be eternal every single time because they always do new origin stories every few years.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking of them too. That's the extreme where the characters are kind of ambiguously maybe teenagers and then maybe in their 20s, maybe getting to their 30s, never past their prime.
But strangely,
but the decades rocket by. You're in the 60s and the 70s, the 80s. Like the background, the world of the background changes.
And strangely, they do also age at the same time as they don't age, because there'll be parallel stories of old Batman and old Superman. Yeah. It's just strange.
It is, in a sense, a timeless era. Nobody really puts a date on anything. So,
right.
It is what it is.
In a way, I mean, because they have old, like, obviously there's old cars and old technology in the original comics. And then as the comics progress, then characters have mobile phones. And then they have, like, social media and, whatchamacallit changes, slang and all that kind of stuff. So
I think it's a little bit like the medieval iconography.
Yeah, that's a good point,
like
actually.
The
religious iconography.
Exactly, from the Bible, and you see like the Virgin Mary wearing a 1300s type of dress and then 1500s type of dress and so on and so forth. Like they are wearing basically modern clothes. It would be like today we would draw Jesus in jeans.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
What I love is the paintings for all the angels. All these angels, like ancient Jewish angels, and they're all dressed in state-of-the-art modern, 14th century armor, 15th century armor.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I actually am a little sad that this faded and we don't have angels wearing state-of-the-art armor now. And
they come down as policemen in riot gear.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh, yeah.
Helmet and a balaclava. Oh, scary fascist angels.
But pretty much, yeah. That actually, yeah. That's now that I think about it, a bit creepy.
Well, angels are meant to be terrifying. There you go.
Yeah, but
they're meant to be awe-inspiring.
It's very right-wingy, I guess, right now.
It does. Fear not, for I am a voice of God.
Like really right-wingy. super right-wingy, like fall off the earth right-wingy.
Fear not, for I am the messenger of our Lord. Bow before me.
Yeah. But going back to consistency, that is a type of consistency in the sense that we consistently create the characters being modern, whatever that modernity is. We don't keep the consistency historically, we keep it consistent with the parameters of the audience that is consuming them. So they have what you have. The reality is your reality consistently.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, all right. Okay, so one of the things that I do for keeping characters consistent in a way that is incredibly useful is to do custom swatches, which you can really do in digital artwork. So I, like in my drawing program on my tablet, I've set up a bunch of swatches that I use, and it doesn't even matter because, like, I do just like the eyedropper tool and copy and paste. Well, not copy and paste, just say eyedropper tool and steal it from older panels on different pages so I can keep the colors consistent. So that's an important thing because you don't want to be redrawing your colors all the time. So
yeah.
That's quite... Oh, and another way I help to try and keep characters consistent is when I do a new page, I copy the old page onto the new one, I shrink it down, and I use that as my reference. So I know what the characters look like currently, at least. Which, you know, doesn't help, like, with the overall consistency because they would have changed gradually through the course of, you know, several pages. But at least they look like what they did on the previous page. So there's that.
Yeah.
So it's a good guide. So,
yeah.
I mean, like, have we mined this character consistency stuff fully? Because we could go into, like, speech bubbles and text.
Let's go on to speech bubbles, even if we haven't mined it completely.
Yeah, it's okay. We can do it again another time.
All right. Well, speech bubbles are an interesting thing. How do you do your speech bubbles, Baines? I'm curious.
It varies a little bit. Speaking of consistency, which I have very little of, I will sometimes do a pre-made speech bubble just used in paint.net that I use for just kind of putting the pages together. Sometimes I'll do it in Clip Studio, which is superior, but I don't know, I'm comfortable with paint.net, so I kind of go back and forth. Clip Studio is nice because they have a balloon pen tool, so you can draw your balloons freehand or have these various shapes to choose from.
Okay.
As well as tails. You can draw freehand in paint.net, but it doesn't look nearly as good. And they do have a speech balloon template, but just one, so you can throw it or shrink it or flip it upside down or whatever, but it often doesn't fit what you need it to fit, kind of thing. So if I'm, not being lazy, I bring it all into Clip Studio. Even my 3D stuff that I'm working on elsewhere, I'll bring it into Clip Studio and do more customized balloons. It usually looks better.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I think I've probably said this before, I do other than the scrawl, the basics of what the characters are doing, and sometimes even before that, I'll often do the speech balloons and dialogue first. That's like the first thing that goes on the page before I'm even doing panels or, sort of stick figures or whatever. I arrange like everything I want to say on the page, and that can change a lot as I develop the page, of course. But that way I can figure out how much story is going on this page. Like, where am I starting? Where am I ending? Then I can, from there, split it into panels and stuff like that. So my speech balloons are very important to me.
That's a good technique to use.
Yeah.
I don't
and
use
make sure you have room for them. When I'm doing 3D, I do them last. But when I'm drawing, I speech balloons first, very often.
That's clever. Yeah, I can't bring myself to do that. I mean, like, I sort of have a rough space for a speech and I sort of know how much I'm going to put in there and I don't put as much detail over that spot, but I don't write it out to start with the speech bubble because I don't know exactly how it's going to go.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I follow a bit of a middle way between you two in the sense that I do my speech balloons last, but before I even start making a page, I have to think what dialogue I'm going to be illustrating. Because for me, the page is illustrated dialogue, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
okay, I'm going to be illustrating these lines, or they are going to be saying this. And then I parse it a little bit so that it always ends in a sort of cliffhangery or at least interesting part.
Okay, makes sense.
But still has like it is evenly distributed across the page unless I want to make a point and things like that. And then once I'm decided about this, I make the panels and the bubbles I want to guide the eye as much as possible on how to even see the pictures.
Yes.
And especially now that I'm doing the battle, because a lot of things are very chaotic and everything is in the dark, and the idea is like all the accounts say how nobody could see basically anything else unless there was like flare or things like that. So the bubbles are a bit of a subtle, I hope, a way to point, okay, this is where the action is taking place. The people are there and the enemy is there. So I have dialogue between the Italians and between the Greeks and everybody, so that people know when they see a blob of dark snow and hills and a bridge where everyone is.
Okay.
I use them like that.
All right.
I do think they flow well. I think I meant to tell you this in your last Patreon page or two, that the flow of dialogue and the sound effects seem really well placed. Like it feels chaotic, but you like the kaboom and the bang and the kapow from here and there. It's immersive. Like it feels like these characters are huddled here and there's this like booming sound over there, and it's kind of it flows very well to me. Like it reads well even when there's a lot being said. It's a very nice flow to it.
I'm so happy it makes me, because I never know if that actually works or not, but now I'm a happy person. Thank you.
Oh, for sure.
It's tricky, isn't it? When I do speech bubbles, at least for Bottomless Waitress, I hand draw them now. And it's really hard to hand draw speech bubbles. It's surprisingly hard. I think it's one of the hardest things to draw. But I've committed myself to doing it, so I continue to do it anyway. But it's so difficult because you're drawing a regular shape and making it look as if it's not like wonky, munted, and it's very, very hard to do. But for Pinky TA, I have a thing where I give them always rounded rectangles. That's my thing. And it's always right aligned, or no, left aligned. Left aligned. And I know that's not what... Yeah, I know that's not what you should do in comics, but I don't care. That's just how I do it.
Speaking of, I like the way you arrange the bubbles and the lettering inside.
Oh, thank you.
I do it centered. I think, yeah, it's centered because it works better for like my speech bubble is this polygonal thing, and because it is very hard in the program to make it round without taking way too much space, considering how much people talk in my comic. So that's why I have this polygonal thing. So it works really well to have it as like blocky as possible, the actual letters. But for you, it works really well, perhaps because of the shape of the bubbles themselves. But it works. I really like it.
Oh,
it has a calming effect on me for some reason.
I'm glad it works out. It was always very difficult to know about how to best letter it and, whether to make letters big or small or use certain kinds of fonts. That's a nightmare. I mean, lettering fonts is so tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. Lately, especially for sound effects, I basically hand letter it because I cannot really find, and like I have tried distorting certain like letters from fonts. It never looks the way I want it to. So I basically hand letter it, the sound effects.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As long as you can do it neatly enough, which it works on yours, I find to make a sound effect look right, hand lettering it is much easier. But for me, I'm so sloppy. Like the typewritten dialogue and other text looks so different from the hand-drawn sound effects. I don't know. It's tricky to make it all work properly.
Yeah.
Together,
If you have like if something is because mine is completely digital, I think I can get away with it. If it was like when I was drawing Wolf, that probably wouldn't fly, assuming that everything else was okay in that comic. So yeah, but the thing I wanted to say about sound effects, beyond the hand lettering, is that the way that the letters distort can get across the impression of sound. And that is something I have noticed now that I need it, because Without Moonlight doesn't really have a lot of sound effects. I only put them in when there is a reason to have it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, now it feels like it is like a palette on its own. How you distort the letters to make like the explosion feel bigger, or very consistent. I write a letter and then I duplicate it, like for the machine guns, like the same.
Right.
All of that.
It's very hard.
Sort of a machine gun, it'll be a small, repeating series of letters, and then for a large explosion, it's larger and more spread out. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It is. It is.
I find it nightmarishly hard for sound effects when I approach them.
So do I. I barely ever use them for the reason I said. It's difficult for me to get it to match the typewritten font. You have to really take your time with it.
Yeah. Before the battle, all my sound effects were typewritten anyway. So
yeah, that's what I usually end up doing too.
Yeah.
A boom.
Yeah, I normally typewrite use a typewriter for it. I normally have mine written out in a font that sort of matches the kind of look that I want, and then just distort it in Illustrator, I think. Like I'll pull the little Bezier curves and stuff and make it particular shape. And I find that that's one of the easier ways to do it, rather than relying on the pre-made font or doing my own sound effect, because that's even harder to draw your own effects.
Yeah,
That's a bastard. Like, lettering is a problem. It took me years to find out what kind of type that I like. I think it's digital something or other. I can't remember what it's called now. But I used to use Anime Ace for so long. Anime Ace 1 and then Anime Ace 2.
I use Segoe, or whatever it's pronounced as, Segoe print. Something like that.
Okay.
I'm using Ready for Anything, it's called. It's similar to Anime Ace, I think. A little bit different.
All right, that's an actual font. See, Baines answers things with jokes, and I can't tell anymore. I just don't know.
Also, that was a polite laugh. It was very convincing. I don't know what he's talking about. I'll just laugh. Yeah.
But yeah, the thing with fonts is that it needs to also be very easy to read. Because if it's not, it will really tire out the reader, and I struggled a lot with that in the first chapters.
Yes.
And like I had typewritten text, and it still was a bother to read. But now I think it is streamlined enough, and I'm happy with it, like the way it looks. So.
Yeah, if it's spread out enough across enough panels, at least that's what I find. Yeah, I definitely sort of writing what happens on this page, and then going to the dialogue, and then sort of trying to cut down that dialogue as you're spreading the balloons around the page. Sort of winnow it down.
Oh, yeah. Cutting down dialogue, I hate that. But you have to, because you can't fit that much writing in a panel and still make it legible.
Yeah, and it tires out the eye of the reader, like Tan said.
Mm. And you can make the text smaller, but no one's going to like that.
That can be tough on the reader, too, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to hate you for that.
I give them enough reasons to hate me. I can't have that.
Oh, and I remember also I had this problem because I had not planned on where my bubbles would go in the beginning, and it would cover a lot of art. So I tried to make them semi-transparent, which made the lettering even harder to read.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And I made so many mistakes.
I had readers tell me one time years ago that it gave them a headache because my balloons were pure white.
Oh, really?
But I've never noticed word balloons not being white usually. So I started muting the color after that, like darkening it slightly after that. Ever since, but yeah,
I don't use pure white. It is almost white from the palette of blue, though, not the palette of red, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
And I think that works a lot better for
Blue.
some reason. I have no idea why it works better, but it does.
Interesting.
Blue, the colour that idiots believe the ancient Greeks couldn't see. Because they're too stupid.
Come on, guys. Yes, no.
All right, we've got to say bye now because the Quackcast is going to end.
Yay.
So,
bye.
Okay,
We could see blue. Bye.
bye-bye.
Like it. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye-bye-bye-bye.